radiation causes mutations is because it distorts the natural order of the body energetically, and then that transmits itself as a mutation of the form. Form is information. Change the information, you change the form if you can get the original form to decode that information. In other words, you transmit it on the right frequency. And of course, they're doing all this stuff now, as I said earlier. Now humans are doing it at our point of understanding. And so once you were locked in, once humans were locked into this fake reality, they were into this round and round the garden world of limitation and suppression and control that we've been in ever since. And Carl Sagan, who knew far more than he was saying, he wrote a book called The Dragons of Eden about the impact of, in many ways, reptilian genetics upon human behavior and human personality. And he says, in effect, you can't really understand the human personality unless you understand the reptilian part of the human form. And one of the things he was massively referring to was the reptilian brain. Everybody has what they call a reptilian brain or an R complex, and it very much relates to emotion. And it's my view that before this genetic tinkering took place, either the reptilian element wasn't there, or it was much less influential, much smaller in its impact than it is today. This is the kind of thing that smacks on the brakes when someone walks in front of your car. It doesn't do critical thinking or working it all out. It's reactive. It's constantly scanning the environment for dangers of various kinds to the operating system. And this is mainstream science. From the reptilian brain, we get primitive and emotional responses. Lunch, for a start. Cold-blooded behavior and territoriality. Mine, it's mine, and you can't have any part of it. A desire to control, an obsession with hierarchical structures of power, which is exactly the way they've structured human society. Aggression, might is right, winner takes all, coming from the reptilian brain. Protecting status, power, reputation, superiority, intellectual preeminence, acquiescence on another level to hierarchy and authority. And for me, of course, there was a very big reptilian input in the Garden of Eden story, which again you find in different versions all around the world. And it talks about the fall of man. I suggest what that fall was the fall down the frequencies from here to here into denser matter, or what we call matter. And it says in the Bible, behold, Adam is become as one of us. I would suggest become of the archontic mind, knowing good and evil. And what is knowing good and evil? It is knowing duality. When you're in a reality based on oneness, based on the heart, which doesn't do duality, then there is no duality. Everything just is. But when you start to pull that unity, that oneness, into different elements of itself, then you can get polarity, you can get duality, and from duality comes conflict, and from conflict comes the energy that they seek, from love to fear, into duality. And so, as we've gone through this period of known human history, this computer virus, if you like, this distortion, has distorted the waveform energetic level of this reality, and we are decoding it through into holographic distortions, like wars and conflicts and people dying of hunger in a world of plenty, where it's all about me instead of all about what is right. And we're locked into this frequency band, thinking it is all that there is. Now, of course, throughout known human history, this theme of possession has been going. Some entities possessing someone and taking over their mental and emotional faculties, their sense of reality. And what that is that on one level, like I said in the first 2 hours, we are an energetic field. You can photograph one level of it, the auric field. And from that auric field is projected the holographic so-called physical world, physical self. What these entities do on an energetic level is lock into that waveform level of the human form. And once they make a connection with it, a frequency connection with it, they can start influencing the perceptions of that person. Now, the more that they impose their information field into the possessed information field, the more the information change is starting to affect the hologram and what the hologram looks like. And when you therefore get these possessed people that actually start to form, that's because so much of the information from the possessing entity has entered the possessed entity that it has started to change the nature of the holographic form. And so you get the exorcist type shift with some devilish face taking over from the human one. But that's an extreme version. But if they can lock into any level, they can start to influence your perception. And interesting, this is a Native American concept of inside of us are two wolves. One they say is evil, it's anger, sorrow, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, all these things. And on the other one, what they call is good, joy, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, all that stuff. And they say, which wolf wins? And they talk about human nature. Well, it's human nature, mate. But is it? Is that human nature? Or is that the distortion seeking to impose itself on human nature? And imposing itself so much that that concedes itself to that and collectively creates a world that reflects that. Which one wins? Well, which one wins in their terms depicts which world wins. That love, benevolence, empathy, think of the world that that would create and once was before the hijack, compared with the world we have now, where we are manipulated more and more into destruction and conflict. Giordano Bruno again. The divine light is always in man and woman, presenting itself to the senses and to the comprehension, but man rejects it because that divine light is beyond the program, consciousness beyond the program, and if we don't reach that level of frequency, we cannot connect with it, and that's what the archontic forces are focused on doing, is holding us out of that connection. So, in plain sight, reptilian gods, it's all over the place. The oldest form of human worship is the worship of the snake or the reptile or the serpent. It goes back at least 70,000 years in Africa, Botswana, the Salido Hills, where the San people, better known as the Bushmen, say that the great python came with a bag of eggs to create humanity. I would say actually to manipulate humanity that existed at that time. This is a guy called Reverend John Bathurst Dean. I won't go through it because we've got so much to get through and I've been through this before. He wrote a book called Worship of the Serpent in 1933. It was a work on the study of worship of the serpent and the snake and the reptile imagery all over the world. It was massive. And he concludes that what follows after his research and all that is that the most ancient account respecting the cause and nature of the seduction of humanity must be the one from which all the rest are derived, which represent the victorious serpent, victorious over man in a state of innocence and subduing his soul in a state of what he would call sin into the most abject veneration and adoration of himself. And he's talking there about the whole concept, wherever he looked, of the fall of man was always related to some serpent figure, not just in Christianity, all over the world. Now, you can find serpent figures. This is a serpent, female and baby. This was one of the finds in the area now known as Iraq, Sumer, Babylon, etc. And it was the Ubaid people, which preceded Sumer a long, long time ago, BC. And you can see in the way they portrayed the pharaohs in Egypt, the cobra, as Credo Mutwa pointed out to me, is a massive symbol of this, what I would call now archontic race, this reptilian race that can take a reptilian form. There's the cobra head on the pharaoh. There's the belly of the... And of course, they're doing all this stuff now, as I said earlier. Now humans are doing it at our point of understanding. And so once you were locked in, once humans were locked into this fake reality, they were into... He wrote a book called The Dragons of Eden about the impact of, in many ways, reptilian genetics upon human behavior and human personality. And he says, in effect, you can't... Form is information. Change the information, you change the form if you can get the original form to decode that information. In other words, you transmit it on the right frequency. Do this round and round the garden world of limitation and suppression and control that we've been in ever since. And Carl Sagan, who knew far more than he was saying, radiation causes mutations is because it distorts the natural order of the body energetically, and then that transmits itself as a mutation of the form.